We are taking a section of our service, as if you've been around for the last several weeks, just to kind of talk a little bit about the heartbeat that God is leading us in this multi-site, is how it's pronounced, endeavor, this vision that He's given to us as a church family. And the last couple of weeks, we're trying to answer some really gut-level, hard questions. And last week, if you weren't there, you can download that from our website now. But this week, we just kind of wanted to, one of those things that kind of nag in our hearts sometimes. What is the real reason why we were even thinking about this? Is this just the current trend? Is this kind of a fad, that churches do? One of the statistics that Jim Tomberlin said while he was here is that just in the last decade, the last 10 years, over 3,000 multi-sites have been launched just in North America. So are we just kind of joining that train? Because that sounds awful shallow, It doesn't sound like that's a lot of meaning or purpose behind it. And it's really interesting. Last week, Bill and I were just chatting a little bit, and we were talking about different passages of Scripture that God was just leading us into. And it must be that we have multi-site on the brain, but there were some truths that just launched out that really kind of answers that question. And the one I was talking to you about was in the book of 1 Peter again, and what an incredible book. I love that book. But right at the very beginning of that book, in the first verse of 1 Peter, is an introductory verse. And it's one of those verses we oftentimes just skip, to get to the meat of the book. But it starts out, he says, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to those who reside as aliens scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who were chosen. Okay, that's the first verse. And something stopped me and said, wow. Because here's these believers that Peter's writing to that are scattered abroad. They were all in one church, Jerusalem, and because of persecution, they were scattered abroad to all these different areas. And here's this guy, Peter, writing this message to multiple locations. One church, multiple locations. And it kind of stopped me and going, man, this sounds kind of multi-site-ish, This isn't really a fad that started in the last decade. This was kind of the strategy God had, thousands of years ago when the church was born. Granted, the church in Jerusalem at that point was the largest church in the world, and they scattered abroad because of persecution, and we're not trying to scatter because of that. We're trying to, expand because of vision. But what a neat way that God had planned to just spread the good news beyond the walls of the church at that point. But then you were talking about another passage.
Yeah, the various questions that go through our minds. I was sitting in my office on Tuesday afternoon, and every once in a while, I am not a natural risk taker. In some areas, I will do that, but often if I'm forced to. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden just swept over me, and I'm not sure of the origin of this thought. Did it come out of my own fear, or was it the enemy kind of placing this thought in my mind? But this thought went through my mind. What if this doesn't work? What if we get up and we lead this church into something, and we ask you to become a part of this, and we ask you to get involved and to invest, and then what if it doesn't work? And it's just like a cold chill went all the way through my body. And I said, wow, Lord, how do we respond to that? And as I often do at those kinds of times, I just went to where I'm reading in Scripture and opened up. I was in Matthew chapter 25. And the next part of Matthew chapter 25 that I read was a story that Jesus told. And it's a familiar story to many of us. There are three men, and there's a master. He's leaving for another country, and he takes these three men, and to one he gives 5 talents of silver, to another one he gives 2, and to the third one he gives 1. And he says, go invest what I have given to you. What you have as a gift, go and use it well. And I began to think about that, and I said, you know, the mindset of the first two, the first one took his 5 and went out and gained 5 more, and the master came back and said, well done. You used well what you were given. And the second one had 2 and took those 2 and used them well, and the master came back and looked and said, way to go, well done. And they had a celebration, but the third one had a different mindset. The first 2 had the mindset of grateful risk-taking. The last one, though, had a different mindset. He came back, the master came and said, so what have you done? And he said, wow, I just had 1, and I was afraid of losing it. I was afraid of failure. And so because I was afraid of failure, I took what I had and I hid it. And here it is. I give you your money back. I didn't do anything with it, but I didn't lose what I had. Here it is. And the master was not pleased, to say the least. And as I looked at that, I said, the only way we really fail is if we don't use well what we have been given, and we have been given much. And the last verse is Matthew chapter 25, 29, says, to those who use well what they have been given, even more will be given. And what they are given is more opportunity. What God really is concerned about is us building His kingdom, leading people to the table, to enjoy His grace and His love forever. That's what we're about. And God will give more to those who use well their resources and use their opportunities. God's going to give more. And with that, I just felt a sense come over me. What is motivating this more than anything in my heart and our hearts is to use well what we've been given. And we've been given a lot, folks. We have been given a lot as a corporate body here. Use well what we have been given for kingdom work, and when the master comes, he's going to celebrate with us. And so as I go in, I said, Lord, help me to have a mind and a heart of grateful risk-taking, not fearful safekeeping. And God is going to take and use what we bring to Him, and He will give us more opportunity. So that was answering that question of my heart.
Again, there might be some questions rummaging around in your heart, and we'd love to hear them, just so we can kind of pray with you and talk about them, and maybe come at a session like this in this part of the service. So you can either email myself or Bill at the chapel here, and we'd love to get back to you.